Hey guys, what's up? This is Ari in Beijing. I'm here with my friend Hien in Tidro, which is basically it's the best Chinese tea shop in New York City. This guy, it's really pretty incredible. I've known him for a while. He's actually Jewish. He's one of my only Chinese Jewish friends, which is really cool, and that's kind of how I met him at first. But what I did not know at all about this guy is that he's actually behind one of my favorite YouTube channels. Which is a channel where this guy basically speaks in Middle Chinese, which for those of you who don't know is an ancient form of, of reconstructed ancient Chinese. Super excited to have you on today, and want to talk about Middle Chinese and your thoughts and strategies on language learning. But yeah, let's get right into it. So Hien, what is it that you do? Like, how do you describe yourself? You know?
Well, my profession is software engineer, which people say not so related to my YouTube channel about linguistics. Well, not linguistics, just languages. But I think computer languages, humans' languages are not that different. I love logics, I love patterns, and I'm from Sichuan province of China, and grew up in Anhui. So I speak several Mandarin dialects as my native dialects, and also later learned Cantonese, and some I can understand some Hakka, but I cannot speak it. And I was able to, and for some random chances, I ran into smart people, and I was exposed to reconstructed Middle Chinese. And I discovered that although it's not a cultural heritage in the sense that it's passed down by generation to generation, it's something constructed, but it is, even as a reconstructed language, it's still at the crossroad of the oldest cultural communication between, cultural exchange between different countries in the Sinosphere, and even between Sinosphere and Indosphere. Chinese, Japanese, Korean culture, as well as Tibetan and Indian culture. And from that point, I started learning reconstructed Middle Chinese as if it is a living language.
This guy sitting right next to me is one of the only people who can speak reconstructed Middle Chinese, which is an ancient form of the Chinese language in North America. I mean, it's one of literally a handful, 10 people. Can you speak a little bit of Middle Chinese for us now?
I might also read a poem.
That'd be awesome.
You might be able to recognize the poem, so I'll not say it in Mandarin, but if you're confused, I guess we'll tell you the answer. 月落乌地上满天，江潮花带着面，姑苏境外岸山寺，夜半将心到天泉。
Wow, dude, that was really incredible. So for starters, Hien, can you briefly explain to us, especially our audience who might not be familiar with Middle Chinese, what exactly is Middle Chinese and how does it differ from, the modern varieties of Chinese or Mandarin?
So Middle Chinese technique definition is the form of Chinese, including grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, spoken starting from Nanbei Chao, and ending at Song Dynasty. And but how's that different from modern Chinese? First of all, modern Chinese itself is also a very diverse language and has many dialects. You have Cantonese, and even within Mandarin, there's many variants. But languages actually evolves, and if you look up some text from Middle English or even Old English, it looks very different from modern English, and same as same applies to other languages, including Chinese. But Chinese is written in Chinese characters, which does not denote the pronunciation. So when you look at Asian text from Tang Dynasty, you can see that while the grammar is slightly different and they tend to use different words, but I don't see the pronunciation. You just in a Chinese class in China or somewhere else, you just read Tang poem in Mandarin, right, in standard Mandarin. But that's not how people used to read it. That's not the pronunciation. It's actually very different from the pronunciation people used to speak it during Tang Dynasty. And if you hear it, you probably going to think it's a different language. That's how much language can change over 1,000 years course. And the modern dialects of Mandarin, for example, they're not just people cannot speak standard Mandarin properly. They're actually natural variants of Chinese, because languages change and different regions change along a different path. And as a nation, as humans of a nation, we pick a certain dialect, Beijing dialect. Well, not exactly, but something that's close to Beijing dialect as a standard, but that's the human choice. The language itself, naturally, it diverges, converges, and diverges again. And so check my channel and you see what Middle Chinese sounds like. It's how people used to speak Chinese. It's very different.
Yeah, it's important to emphasize too just how cool this guy's channel is. So again, literally, I had been listening to this channel for years, and I had no idea that Hien was behind it. And when I made that connection, I was just like, whoa, dude. You are the man. So definitely check it out.
And a hint for time travelers: if you go back in Tang Dynasty, before you encounter romance, learn Tang Dynasty language, because otherwise you won't be able to communicate with a handsome prince.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Well, before Middle Chinese, I was interested in languages in general. I was trying to learn some German and go out and learn Japanese, and became actually conversational in that one. And I was learning some dialects, as I mentioned earlier. And I have a friend who was also really into dialect and give me some good resources. But this I don't know how many languages are in the world, and I have limited time. And learning language, and there's a maintenance cost.
Right.
Like you don't just learn it.
There's a huge maintenance cost, right? Because for every language that you learn, you kind of need to, you need to actually put in the effort to keep it up, right?
Yeah. I mean, I ran into a teenager who's said to speak 77 languages. He was in high school or something.
Tim Donor.
Maybe.
Okay,
So it's possible. Some people, I'm not that smart. I have limited amount of time, and I learn languages slowly. So I realized that I have to pick the languages that's culturally significant for me, because I'm interested in learning all the languages, any language. But I could only invest time in those that are either emotionally intimate to me or has the cultural significance to me.
Obviously, you studied a lot of languages in the past, and you talk about maintaining those languages that you've studied. I have a lot of listeners and followers who are looking for tips about how to maintain languages they're learning, or are studying multiple languages. Maybe do you have any advice for these people who are tackling multiple languages, or even just trying to maintain a language in the context of another language environment?
Well, when I say you cannot learn all the languages, all the languages, a lot of languages. Right. I think if you're really up to it, you can still learn quite a few, and that's totally possible. And so one of the things is it's hard to say which one is more important, but to me the most important thing is to having a constant exposure to it. It doesn't have to be a lot exposure, but it has to be regular, has to be frequent. You just spend 15, not necessarily even conversational, but just something that you hear, something you read, for even just 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. It doesn't take you much time if you're a very busy person, but that's important. And that's necessary for maintaining your progressing language, but even just 10 minutes a day can make you progress very fast after. Our brain just works that way. Sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Our brain is wired to learn languages even at old age. At old age, our muscles become less flexible, and there's certain things probably don't do math that good anymore. But language skill, like the ability to learn new language, that never ages. Also, so when it comes to languages, there's two parts. One is how it naturally is, and how you're gonna, as a learner, how you're gonna approach it, how your brain is gonna interact it. Another part of it is like, what is the current policy on it? What do grammarians say is correct and not correct? So these two parts actually partially overlap, because the grammar rules actually is derived from the natural grammar of language. It's not just made up. It's based on the actual grammar, actual logic of language. But what I'm saying is, making mistake when you learn a new language, or even just speaking your native language, is natural, and sometimes it's a necessary process. And even though in the end you want to correct these mistakes, but you first have to make these mistakes. And so don't ever be embarrassed. Especially don't be embarrassed before you start speaking and about, hey, am I gonna say something wrong? Well, probably you are gonna say something else. That's how you learn it. How you learn anything.
Yeah. So if you had any tips then for people, like, for example, just starting learning Chinese, for example. Obviously, you've studied, a number of languages in the past. Clearly, obviously with your English, a very successful degree. So, what any kind of more generic advice there for kind of the first steps you might take to get foreign language?
Actually, I don't have the most generic advice right now. So I'm an engineer, and I'm an engineer now. I was majoring in science and math, so I have a very logical mind. That's how I understand things. So maybe not for all of you, but for those of you who also have the habit of approaching problems in a very analytical manner, it's good to read theories about languages. That actually helps sometimes. I know if it gets to the point it's too confusing, stop and focus on natural aspects of language. Just having exposure is good enough to improve yourself. But if you're up to it, look up some theories, especially like phonetics. And I think the beautiful thing about the rationality of human brains is that it can get you over your own intuition. You can learn very counterintuitive stuff by using your rationality, and that applies to especially not just to grammar, but actually especially to the pronunciations. Say if your native language has a very different phonetic system from this new language you're going to learn. Well, first of all, you're probably going to notice that there's certain sounds you cannot make. But that's something that you can realize. This is also something that it's hard for you to intuitively realize, that even when you think you pronounce something right, it might actually be wrong, because some sounds in the new language you're learning, they're different, but they consider the same sound in your native language. And to get over that, you need to go against the intuition. And that's when I found theory, like phonetic theory, to be helpful when I was learning languages.
Anything else you want to tell people? Where can people find your awesome videos on YouTube? Anything else?
Oh yeah, please check my YouTube channel. It's you don't come across Middle Chinese every day.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and
thank you.
Definitely everyone follow him on YouTube. Again, we're going to post the link in the comments, and see you guys next week. 再见. And how do you say that in Middle Chinese?
Oh, maybe say why.
Say why. Okay. Thanks everyone. Bye.